I'm Katie.
I'm Anna.
She's a psychotherapist.
And she runs a photography empire. Together we make music and we podcast
to encourage ourselves
and you
to do the things that scare us most. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Doing Scary Things podcast. Today we're talking with Jessica Stewart all about how she recently quit her job to go out on her own as a bookkeeper, how she's recently turned 30 and it's not as scary as she thought, and the other endeavors she does on a regular basis to keep her creative juices flowing. We think you're going to love it.
Jessica, welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
We are so happy you're here, and we would love for you to tell us who you are and what you got going on.
Cool. Well, my name's Jessica Stewart. I have a lot going on, but I'll stick with the basics. So mainly right now, I own my own business as an accountant / bookkeeper, but I have a lot of other cool little projects happening as well. But that's my main moneymaker.
Awesome. It's good to have one of those.
Yeah, the ones that like keep you comfortable so you can do the fun stuff.
Yes.
Well, what's the fun stuff since you're alluding to that?
Okay, let's see. Well, last year I decided to learn how to do macrame and somehow turn that into a side hustle where now I sell like these really awesome like macrame plant shelves for my terrible plant habit that I have. And I also sing in several different groups, and I was in an ABBA cover band for a while, which was a lot of fun. And yeah. And then this year I'm starting a new project called Fat Outdoorsy, which is just essentially like it's going to be half like hiking meetup group and half just like way to encourage people to go outdoors and do things that they want to do that they may have not felt welcome in those spaces before, whether it was because of other people or because of their own insecurities. So yeah, I'm really excited about that one.
That is so cool.
So cool.
Yeah, so that's like an up and coming project that you're working on now?
Yeah, some friends / like colleagues of mine kind of forced me to like set my first hiking meetup date. They're like, you have to do it, because I was like putting it off because I was so nervous, and they're like, no, you need to like start one and just do it, and that way you can stop feeling so like stop procrastinating because you're basically scared of it. So yeah, we're having our first hiking meetup on March 2nd, which is like 2 weeks away.
Yeah, that is awesome. Mm-hmm. So you have the location, you have the date, it's happening.
Yeah, people have already like I didn't send the invite to anyone, and people have already like marked themselves as interested. I was like, that's not what I was really ready for.
That's incredible.
But like people like saw the event and they're like, oh, I'm interested. I'm like, all right, this is real now. People are going to show up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and that's something we were talking about. I feel like that one of the scary things about starting something new is that fear of like, is anybody else going to show up? Like, am I all alone? Or is,
right.
That's
I sort of have the opposite fear though. Like my fear is that like 20 people are going to show up.
Right.
And I'm going to be like, this is too much. I don't know if I'm prepared for this.
The fear of success.
That's real too, though.
Or / maybe the fear of leadership.
I think it's more of that for me, honestly. Like the leadership thing, I'm just like, am I equipped to be the person to like lead these people, even if it's just on a hike? It's like not even like the bigger conversation of like what I'm saying about fat people and being outdoorsy. Like it's just, can I just lead these people on a hike through the woods?
Right. So. Let's start there.
You are equipped. However, if you're talking about how to read a map, I can't help you.
Yeah,
but
that's what Google Maps are for, but yes.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, I mean, not to get too esoteric too fast, but there's a difference between being equipped and feeling qualified, you know? Because even a very qualified person might not be equipped for that specific venture or whatever, but also there's slightly different things. And I think when we are afraid of things going well, we're afraid of probably both of those things, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
We're questioning both of those things.
Yeah. Feeling like qualified is not a space that I'm very comfortable with being in. But like it usually happens after I start the thing, which is good, I guess. It's probably better to go in with like a little bit of humility than be like, I'm so ready for this.
I was born to do this.
I know everything about leading people.
I do love those people. Like they do help me a lot through life, but I'm not one of those people.
Yeah. I think that's reassuring probably to a lot of people. You can start before you're an expert. we're all about that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exciting. I'm proud of you for getting one on the calendar.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit, how did the macrame come about? Because, okay, just to back up, you've recently ventured on to your own, being self-employed,
Yes.
correct? With the accounting and bookkeeping. So I'm sure that was a challenge.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about that. But then how did you find time to start macrame also?
Well, the macrame thing, I guess it kind of starts with like leaving my full-time job. Because like I had a full-time job as an accountant. And for a lot of different reasons, but one of the reasons was it was just taking up a lot of my time. I worked tax seasons, and so I'd have like 60 to 70 hour weeks, during the spring and the fall, and it was just like, and I wasn't happy there, and so I was like, I'm gonna leave and do this on my own so that I can have the freedom to do things that I want to do. And that was one of the benefits once I left and kind of like found my footing, was that I did have time. And to be fair, you do have to like purposely make time for those things once you're self-employed, but like I learned that I could make time for my creative outlets, because let's be real, like bookkeeping is not the most creative of outlets. So yeah, like I wanted to make time to be creative. But I've done like handmade stuff for a long time, and I wanted to learn something new. And macrame was like sort of similar to what I've done before, but new enough that I felt like I was learning something and growing a little bit. And so, yeah, that was kind of like macrame was my new creative outlet after I left my full-time job and started working for myself.
Wow.
Very cool.
So like, I'm curious about that. How is it that you did make time? Because I think, like you're saying, maybe the content area of bookkeeping doesn't feel that creative to you, but running your own business is really creative. Can we agree?
Yeah, definitely.
So how is it that you went about sort of starting something new and fitting something in and making time for it?
Well, honestly, it was more of a reactionary thing, because I actually, I left my job with all these like ideas of like, this is going to be so great. I'm going to have like so much more freedom to like be creative and expressive, even within my own company, not just like with other outlets. But it literally took me probably 6 months to like figure out how to work for myself and how to like work from home and be like a self-starter, which is not like innate for me at all. It took me like 6 months to figure that out, and also just remember why I left my full-time job in the first place. Like I sort of like fell into this hole of like, I have to pay the bills, and if I'm not working, I'm not paying the bills.
Yes.
Like working for yourself versus like working a full-time job is so different, because you can just show up for a full-time job, and yeah, like you have to do your job, but it's okay if you spend a little time here, like, getting coffee or talking to a coworker or whatever. Like when you work for yourself, especially when you're an hourly charger like me, like if you're not working, you're not getting paid.
Right.
So like that was terrifying. And I sort of went into the spiral of like, I have to work every day, but I also was like really bad about procrastinating. So like I would work like really late at night. I mean, I think I sort of just got lost in the idea of like making sure I was paying the bills, and honestly just forgot why I left my job in the first place. And like, it's kind of funny because Katie and I have been learning about the Enneagram lately.
Yes,
and like, it's like, and like, I'm a 9, and we oftentimes like forget, we just kind of zone out and like go on autopilot mode, which like knowing that now, I'm just like, oh my God, that's exactly what I did. I just went into this autopilot mode of like, I need to get by, I need to make sure that like I'm paying the bills. And I just completely forgot. And honestly, 6 months into like working for myself was completely miserable. I was working on weekend nights and weeknights, and just like not doing the things that I wanted to do. And it took me like kind of zooming out and like taking a look at why I was doing the things I'm doing, and remembering, no, like 6 months ago you were doing this because you wanted to be happier, and you're not happier now. So what's gone wrong?
Yes.
And that was whenever it was like, you need to make time for these outlets. Part of that was like scheduling and sticking to a schedule of work for myself. But yeah, like it was like the macrame thing was sort of like a healing thing. It was like, you need to do this because you're not happy and you're not as whole as you could be.
How insightful and brave to ask yourself those questions. You didn't give up there. You were just like, okay,
yeah,
this is not how I envisioned it.
Yeah.
Why not? How can I turn this around and fix it and make it work? Because I'm sure when you left your job and you had a really brilliant, shining reasons why, you did not imagine it going that way.
No. Well, I also like, I kind of had something to prove when I left my job because I was very unhappy at my last job for various reasons. And it was sort of a toxic atmosphere. And I was like, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to do it right.
Yeah.
You know, and like to
snapped.
get 6 months into, yeah, exactly. I did like the Z snap on my way out the door. And like, and 6 months into it, I was like, I thought I was going to be happier. I thought I was going to be like so excited about this, and I'm not. And why? And that was like sort of a sad moment because I was trying to prove something and I didn't. But it took a little while, but like it's fine. I think I've finally gotten to the point where I'm like, no, this is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I'm really glad you didn't give up in that moment too, you know, because everybody who's self-employed can agree it is that trade-off. You know, you are going to work ridiculous hours. Sometimes there's no way around it. And especially until you learn boundaries. And that one took me like a decade, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like super hard to figure that out and to keep those things in perspective. I actually told somebody one time I was having trouble kind of with what you're saying. Like, you know, it was almost starting to feel like, oh, maybe it would just be easier just to like check out and punch a time clock or whatever you do these days. I was like, I'm just going to get up at like 5:30 and get myself dressed one morning, and I'm going to walk myself down to the MARTA and get on MARTA, pretend I've got to be somewhere at 6. I'm going to go sit in traffic like for 2 hours a day, like whatever it is, you know. I was like, as stupid and probably naive as that sounds to people, I was just like, I just really got to keep this in perspective. You know, there are a lot of really good things about being self-employed, and I've got to remember those in the moment when it is super, super hard. I'm so proud of you for hanging in there and getting in those healthy rhythms. I know how difficult that can be.
Yeah, and not just hanging either. You're like learning.
Yes.
You're like no stranger to I run up against a challenge, and so now I've got to learn something new. And you're like, I don't know if you're as enthusiastic about it every time, but it sounds like you're very capable and you do it. You're like, what do I need to learn?
Yeah. And I will say, like, I am not perfect at like maintaining good boundaries every week. It's sort of like a week to week thing for me, where I'm like, this week I'm going to do well. But like, even when I'm not great at like stopping work at like 6 p.m., like I am remembering like, this is why, you know, like, and just having like those daily reminders of like, you're doing this because you get to do these other things. Which it's just it's a different mindset than I had in the beginning too. So it's really good to be in that place now.
Yeah. And at least you're aware of it now, you know?
Yeah,
that
exactly.
6 o'clock hits and you're like, okay, I see you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not like blowing past it, working till 9 and being like, where did the sun go?
That's good.
Yeah.
Totally. What are some rewarding things that have come out of, you know, working for yourself so far that you might be able to share with us?
Honestly, like time with people, that was kind of one of my big ones. I have a lot of friends who have like untraditional schedules, a lot of friends who are like musicians, or like my sister who's a teacher and gets like all this time off, and also like who just needs a lot of help with her job sometimes. And being self-employed gives me like the freedom to go see my friends and get lunch, or like help my sister on a school field trip, or just like, you know, like these things where I wasn't able to like just be there for her before or be there for them. Like, to me, that's really special and really important to me. So that's kind of the biggest one for me. I mean, the other one is just like, I definitely am a little bit of like I like to work for myself, I guess is the best way to put it. I like not having to answer to anyone except for myself, which is like a whole different struggle in and of itself. But it's like, it's more rewarding to answer to myself than to have to answer to someone else sometimes.
Totally.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was just thinking, I frequently think of myself as unemployable. I'm like, no,
Tell us more.
I'm too used to doing my own thing all the time.
Right. Yeah, like, am I ready to show up every day, 5 days a week?
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, it's great.
I have to put on real person clothes? What?
I've worn these sweatpants for days. And I love it. You know, that's my why. My sweatpants.
It's Giuseppe.
Just remember your why. We should make a meme.
We should make some sweatpants and say that. My why.
The work from home sweatpants.
My why.
That's
That
real,
can be
though.
a thing.
It is real.
But I definitely remember thinking, I don't want to wake up at 5 a.m. every day. You know, I don't want to do these things and conform to this pattern. Like, I do want that flexibility, you know. And yes, there are definitely things I traded for that freedom, but it is great to have that, you know?
Yeah, well, and I think that just goes to show, like, it was a worthy trade. It's the right thing for you.
Yeah. Yeah, we're certainly not saying it's right for everybody. I think
Yeah.
what I really wanted to hear from you, Jessica, is, just the honesty behind that there are challenges, but you have come through it, with flying colors. And I think that's amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think I had this sort of rose-colored glasses view of the way it was going to be. So it's probably good that I had it so early on, and the realization that it wasn't going to be this, you're just gonna get to go out all the time and see all of your friends and make all the money without doing any actual work. But but yeah, I mean, it's still a struggle now, but I feel like I have a lot more joy behind me than I did before. So
Good. That's what it's like to have a dream,
Yeah.
Every dream has rose-colored glasses, I think, but
Sure.
I think that's good because otherwise we probably wouldn't chase half of them that are still worth chasing anyway. And
Exactly.
yeah, that's great.
Definitely.
I heard a rumor that you had a birthday recently. Can we talk about that?
Birthday. We can talk about it. I want to tell you something funny though. So I turned 30.
Yes.
And I was like, it's 30, 30 is it's not bittersweet, but it's exciting, but also you're 30. And I'm just walking around, kind of not really thinking about it a lot. And I go to Sephora to buy face wash, and I get up to the counter, and I didn't know that they had my birthday on file. I give them my information, they ring a bell, and then everyone in the store yells happy birthday.
Oh my God.
I was like, okay. Was not prepared for that.
You're instead of saying thank you, you're like,
yeah, I was like, okay, let me go.
Alrighty then.
It's I love you. Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was not what I was expecting going to Sephora, but it was a funny experience.
I didn't know they did that.
No.
I'm glad they don't call out your age. Not that 30, I mean, you should wear that proudly, but yeah, it's happy 55th birthday.
Yeah.
No.
Not that there's anything wrong with being 55, I have to disclaim. But, I've heard a rumor that some women don't want their ages disclosed.
Right.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
It seems to be a thing.
that's why we're buying makeup. Anyway.
Yeah, Sephora of all places ought to be a little sensitive to that.
Yeah.
You would think.
Oh, yeah, she was like, oh, you don't look 30. And I was like, thank you.
How old do I look? Do I look older than 12? Because hope so.
Nice in between. But yeah. Yeah, I turned 30.
Yeah.
It was actually pretty great.
Good. What was that like leading up to it? Were you scared? Were you looking forward to it? What were the emotions there?
I think it was I was sort of at war because I do have a lot of friends who are older than I am, not old, but older than I am, and all of them would tell me
55.
55, yeah.
Sorry.
Who just would tell me about how great 30 was. They were just oh, it's such a different outlook on life. You can give a about anything anymore. Not anything, but you stop caring so much about what people think about you, which I was just craving, which is so funny to be 27 and be I wish I didn't have to care what people think. And it's well, you don't.
Right.
It's
when
not
I'm 30, I won't care anymore.
When 30,
number.
a switch will flip and you will suddenly not care.
Yeah.
But I also, I was just struggling with the fact that I was turning 30 and my life was not what I thought it would look like at 30. It was a war, I think. I was excited, but not sure what it would be like. I did sort of think the second I turned 30, a lot of things would just suddenly be different. But it wasn't like that, thankfully.
Yeah, that's interesting though, because I think a lot of people, I think the stereotype is that people are, very grieved about turning 30. Mm-hmm. It's great on one hand that you were encouraged about 30. No, all this great stuff, comes with being 30 or in your 30s maybe. But that also kind of puts a weird expectation on it. Like you're saying,
it does.
And the clock will strike midnight and my pumpkin will turn into a carriage.
Right.
Yeah.
And everything will be great. And so that's kind of interesting too. That might have set you up for some weird expectations.
Well, I think a lot of it kind of started changing before I was even 30. Not just the parts where you wake up and you can't drink the same way you could when you were younger.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. the last like 3 years, I've been dealing with some like mental health issues, just like anxiety and depression. And it's sort of, if you want to get out of it, it sort of forces you into this area of like self-awareness, especially if you're in therapy for 3 years like me. At a certain point, you kind of have to like address those things. And so like, I think that sort of transformation started before. It did take me a while, but like, you know, leading up to 30, I was already in that mind space of like wanting to know more about myself and just to grow more. I feel like a lot of the things that are scary about turning older are just like the feeling that you'll never change, that you're always going to be the same person that you are now. And I don't think that's true at all.
Yeah, I think that's as true as much as you believe it, you know? Mm-hmm. Like it's a limiting belief.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Also, thank you on behalf of the therapeutic community for showing up and working on yourself. Yes. Everyone should do that.
Everyone should be in therapy. Yeah. I don't care what you're going through. Like, therapy is amazing.
Going through life is enough to necessitate therapy.
That's what I was going to say. I hate that there is that stigma of like, I feel like it's especially like that in marriage. It's like people act like something has to be wrong for you to go. And I'm like, well, maybe if you were in therapy the whole time, you wouldn't have got to that point, you know? Like that's just, and that I'm just sharing honestly. Like well, I highly recommend it.
I concur with that assessment.
So yeah, thank you for sharing all those thoughts. And I think that's so true. What sort of self-awareness are you talking about? Like, what does that mean to you? What sort of things have you worked on?
So I'd heard about the Enneagram last year from you.
You're welcome.
And Katie was like, you have to take this test. And so I like went online and like took like the $12 test or whatever. And I remember taking it and like getting my results back and being like, I don't feel like that's me. Just really? Was like, but yeah, I was just like, I don't feel like that's like that I've been tested correctly, you know? Just side note, a lot of people feel that way about the test. So it doesn't necessarily mean like you can go find another number or whatever. Yeah, exactly. And it did so happen that like I needed to like look a little bit more to really to figure out exactly what my number was. So that happened, and then I started hearing a lot about this idea of like self-awareness, like from a friend of Katie's that I met not too long ago, was like talking about how like there's two different kinds of self-awareness, like internal and external, and that kind of pushed me to learn more about like what kind of self-awareness I had. And I just started to see a lot of these themes in the things I was finding value in and finding like, you know, meaningful ideas from, was this theme of like just defining your values and like basing your life on those things. That was kind of a telling moment for me, is like when I would read something that would be like, define your values. I was like, oh yeah, because that's something that like no one ever told me before. Well, ever, you know, before I was like 29, no one was like, you need to think about your values and then like, and think about like how those shape your life. And I was just like, how is it that like I got this far in life and had never like broached this subject before? Why wasn't everyone just like telling their kids this stuff?
Yeah, you know? Everyone's like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite food?
Yes, like dumbing down the conversations. Yeah.
Or like, what do you want to do in life? And it's like, why are we asking 18-year-olds what they want to do in life? Why aren't we asking them like what they care about first? Yes, and then letting them figure that out.
Thank you.
I love it.
That's sort of, I don't think I was like, I'm turning 30. I want to know more about myself. It's just kind of like, it was this overwhelming pull to just like understand why I am the way that I am. And I don't know, it's been a very cool experience so far. Not always like a fun one. Like whenever you learn about the things that motivate you or like why you are the way that you are. But like in the end, like it's better to know than to not know, in my opinion.
Yeah,
definitely.
I also concur with that assessment. I think that's great. And it just reminds me what you said earlier about you kind of have to stay humble, and certainly developing your self-awareness keeps you humble. And that's good because humility is attractive. So humility
it should be.
Yeah. It's attractive in so many ways to let people know that you're a real person and you're a safe person. And that's so important.
Yeah, it's a fun space to be in. I've always been someone who's like generally an open book about my flaws. I would rather like just tell people to their face than have people like talking about behind my back about me. Not that people do that all the time, but just like I just love being open about things because I feel like it makes other people feel more comfortable and more willing to like address their own stuff as well. So
yeah,
it's been overall like turning 30 and becoming more self-aware. And I don't even feel like I'm that self-aware yet. I feel like there's so much more I could learn about myself. But
well, it's that never-ending journey, right? actually we should probably be excited to get older, because what that actually is going to prove is that now we've had more time to learn about ourselves. We've had more time to work on things that we care about. You know, like, that's great. Like, I don't want to go back to when I didn't know anything about whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So I like that.
Yeah, that's good motivation to keep working on yourself too, because you're only going to just keep getting older. So wouldn't it be nice to be more self-aware the older you get?
Yeah.
And it's good motivation to keep getting older.
That's right. And it's a full circle.
Yeah. It's also funny too, because like I do find myself, like, now that I know like what number I am on the Enneagram and just like understand more about myself, I find myself like worrying sometimes. I'm like, oh, is this like all I'm ever going to be? You know, and then I have to remind myself, like, no, like, because you know these things, you can change them if you want to. You can grow.
Definitely.
I think there's always like a sort of core of your being that will be like the same. But like, now that I do know those things about myself, like doing Fat and Outdoorsy, like, it's been really difficult. Like I told you guys about setting the date for the first hike.
Yeah.
I was given basically a week deadline to do this by my friends. So I'm part of this women's entrepreneur group, and we encourage each other and like challenge each other, and they're like, you have a week to do it. And I literally put it off until the last day. I like did it an hour before our first meeting, but just because every time I thought about it, I would just get anxious. I would just be like, all the things that could go wrong. Either like no one's going to show up, or 50 people are going to show up, or like, what if I'm not ready to do this? What if I'm not the right person to do this? Like, all of those terrible things. But because I know and understand myself now, I see the ways that like my motivations and my personality are like trying to like push those things on me and trying to like hold me back. Because I know them now, I can recognize them more easily and not walk past them, but climb over them and just sort of, I know that they're there now, and I've acknowledged them, and that makes it a little bit easier to be like, Jessica, you're doing this for a reason, and not just let those things like consume me and overwhelm me.
That's powerful.
It is.
I like that. Also, just wanted to throw in, we actually haven't talked about the Enneagram on the podcast. For anybody who doesn't know, it's a personality test, and it's been around for forever, but it's just now getting pretty popular in culture, society. The whole point of it, the way most people explain it, is to increase empathy, right? So it's like, if I know you're a 9, you know, you're not supposed to like go around and say, oh, she's a 9, like whatever, you know, she'll never do blah, 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 blah. The point is to actually increase in empathy for that person. So, you know, okay, because of this thing that maybe happened to her in her childhood or what have you, this is how she kind of deals with things. And so it has been super helpful in my own relationships, kind of learning these things. So maybe we'll talk a little bit more about it. Sometime soon. But
what's so cool about that is like, I feel like sometimes the people who need the most empathy are ourselves. Because like self-criticism is like a killer. It's my worst enemy, is self-criticism, because I can be so hard on myself. But when I know the reasons behind why I do things, it's easier to like have grace for myself.
Yes.
And forgive myself for like things in the past, which I tend to dwell on. and know that like, that's not who I have to always be.
That's a great point. That's something we've talked about a couple times. Just feeling seen, feeling known, knowing that you're not alone. And I will say that is definitely something I got from the Enneagram. You know, a lot of people, when they first find their number, they're like, how do they know this about me? Like, I literally felt like this person was reading my mail, and it was just astonishing.
Yeah.
And so there is that element of like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person that's ever reacted in this way. But there are also within that helpful paths of growth that it's like, okay, if you have trouble with confrontation, for example, work on that. You know, it just shines a light on different parts of your personality. So
I'm glad you pointed out too that the point of it is to increase empathy. And you're saying sometimes we need to give ourselves the empathy.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you are going to go down a path of sort of developing your self-awareness, whether that's through Enneagram or through something else, you have a choice all along the way if you're going to use that information to be nice to yourself and to help yourself, or if you're going to beat yourself up with it. I mean, there's a lot of things that it could go either way, right? where you're
Exactly.
like, what do I do with this information? So I like that you've sort of established within yourself already, like you're committed to using it to increase your empathy for yourself and to have grace for yourself and to forgive yourself. And I would just like to say that seems to be a very productive way to handle that, you know, like
Hopefully.
where does that inner critic really get us?
I think it can be good, but it's like it's a healthy balance of the two.
Yes.
Because your inner critic can like push you along and you know, spur you into action, or and like in my case, it can like just pull you down into the depths and just like keep you in bed all day and not let you accomplish anything. So
Well, I think it's only healthy to the extent that it's helpful. And as soon as it starts being to your detriment, that's when you know it's too much or it's not telling you the truth.
yeah.
I love it.
You
I
guys
love
are so
self-awareness.
smart.
Yeah, I do feel like I have to give like a disclaimer when I start talking about the Enneagram though, because people are like, oh, just one of those like personality types. And I'm like, no, it's so different. I promise.
There's been a lot of personality tests over the decades. We've seen them come, we've seen them go. This one is trendy right now, but it's for a reason, you know? They'll all had their time in the sun for reasons because they really do show us a lot about ourselves.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like more self-awareness is never a bad thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just going to say don't hate it just because it's trendy. Like, at least read about it, see if you can gain anything from it. If not, that's fine.
Yeah, wait for the next one.
Yeah.
Or do like Jessica and just initiate your own self-awareness journey without it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited to see how the Fat and Outdoorsy group goes and how all your projects continue to grow together.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you so much for sharing about them with us.
Yeah.
Just kind of in closing, what advice would you give to someone who is maybe scared to take the first step in their journey or the next step? What would you say to those people?
It's okay to take time to think about it. It literally took me a year to decide if I was going to do it, and then like another 3 months to like actually do the thing where I set the things in motion to quit my job. It's okay to take time because there's a lot of unknowns, especially like I'm single, I'm not married. Like I feel like people who are married sometimes have more flexibility in like leaving their job. Like I was getting advice from these one time and they're like at a certain point you just have to like give up that other money and like work on this business. And I'm like, but I can't give up that money. Like,
But you have somebody paying your bills, sweetie.
yeah.
No other money.
Yeah, totally.
To think about it, but also just like know that like there isn't going ever to be like that. It's like people who talk about like getting ready for a baby. Like there's not going to be a time when you're ready for this.
Yeah.
You kind of do just have to do it and like give yourself a safeguard or give yourself, you know, a safety net for when you leave. Whether it's like for me, I kept working for my previous employers as like a contractor, and that like helped me feel more comfortable leaving my job and transitioning to something new. Or maybe it's like saving up enough money for 6 months, you know, so that you do have that safety net just in case you don't get as much business as you thought you would, or like those kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's good to feel secure, but also like sometimes that insecurity is your inner critic, or it's your or it's just that nagging voice that's just trying to hold you back. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be your motivation to make things happen, you know, when you have no backup plan.
Well, and I love that advice because it's like, guess what? You can take time and you can have a runway. You don't have to blindly leap off the cliff, you know?
Yeah,
that's really
exactly.
exciting to some people.
it is. And like I would not like put those people down. I like envy those people. But it's not, that's not reality for a lot of people. So for me, it was more of a transition into self-employment and less of a like flying leap. And that's okay.
Yes.
Definitely.
Flying leaps are certainly not the only way.
Yeah.
I think that just reminded me of what you were saying earlier about how you don't have to necessarily be an expert at something when you start. You don't have to have all the answers when you start. And so I love what you said about, you know, it's never going to feel like the perfect time. I think that's absolutely true. You know, at some point you do have to just kind of take that step, and it may feel like a huge leap, even if it's not. Even if you do have, you know, you might have a year's worth of income in the bank and you're still really scared. Like, that's okay. You know, you're allowed to feel however you feel. But just know that you can do it. You can move forward.
Yeah. I think from the outside, sometimes people seem to think that like people who leave their jobs or start their own businesses, like just have it all together. And it's like, please just come to me and ask me, because I would tell you that's not what it was like.
Yeah.
I was like, terrified for a long time when I did mine, and it's still scary sometimes. Like, and I loved being honest with people about that, because it's like, yeah, it's hard, but it's super rewarding if you're in a healthy place and you're doing it the way that's true to you.
We appreciate your honesty so much, because I think that's something that we have both been frustrated with at different times. Is just that when you're looking for encouragement, or you're looking for, you know, a community, and everything you find is just people who actually talk about it like it was all magic and butter and whatever.
Easy.
And and that's just not helpful.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other piece of advice I would give is, like, I've found a really great group of female entrepreneurs that I meet with every week, and having that sense of community and just the people you can go to, and one, like, just vent if you need to, but also, like, bounce ideas off of, and get good, honest, truthful feedback is something I didn't know that I needed, but when I found it, I was like, this was the missing piece to the puzzle, is having, like, that sense of community. Because when you leave a full-time job and you leave the comfort of a team and people you can, like, go to and also rely on and lean on, that's, like, the biggest thing that I missed about it. And I didn't know it until I found my friends at the Lola, who are amazing. and honestly, like, the key to those kinds of groups is just being honest and just being open about your struggles and about the good things. So.
Yeah. But I think that's huge. Don't be afraid to say, like, I don't have it all together, because you are going to inspire somebody else. I'm sure of it.
And what you soon will find is no one has their shit together.
Yes.
We're all just like, I need a schedule. I need routine in my life. Like, no one has that. We're all trying to find it.
That is truth.
Yeah.
I need to remind myself of that.
I'll make you an audio clip of her saying that. You could just play it over and over.
Yeah.
Also, I need to make an appointment with you real quick, because it took me way too long to work on my tech stuff yesterday.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was just going to ask you, my voice cracked like a prepubescent child. I was going to ask.
Part of your question?
No. I was going to ask you if your bookkeeping services and accounting stuff, do you work with a lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs and stuff like that?
Yeah, so my main focus is nonprofits and small businesses.
Cool.
I work with some people, like, on a month-to-month basis, like keeping their books up to date. And then I also specialize in helping new businesses or old businesses, if you haven't gotten your books done yet.
I'm raising my hand.
No shame, no shame.
The tiny hand raise.
Yeah.
Help them get their books set up and get them comfortable. I specialize in teaching people how to do their own QuickBooks. Because let's be real, not everyone can afford to hire a bookkeeper, even if it's for, like, a couple hours a month. So I understand that, and I want to make people feel less stressed about their accounting in general, because you can have a life where you can own your own business and have good accounting and not pay a lot of money for it.
Yes, that's awesome.
I'm breathing, like, out very heavily right now. Thank you.
Thank you personally.
Thank you also for calling me an old business. But
I wasn't referencing you, I promise.
I'm just kidding.
Your business is like 55.
Right. I just want to personally apologize to all the 55-year-olds. You're so young.
Yes, 55 years young.
Yes.
But that's great. I wanted to ask that because I suspect that some of our listeners are, their scary thing might be starting a business or something that will at some time be monetized and then be a business or whatever. So where can people find you if they want to connect with you, if they want to hike with you, if they want your services?
Macrame.
Yeah, or your macrame. Yes.
Or my macrame. Cool. Well, if you want to find all of that, the easiest way is on Instagram. I am Jessa Stew, JESSASTEW. And from there, you can find my macrame Instagram. You can find my Facebook page, which is where you'll find the Fat Outdoorsy stuff. And you can find my website for my bookkeeping, which is mintinmoxie.com. And I list all my services there. And you can schedule an appointment with me on my website if you want. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Everybody go do that right now. We'll wait.
We're about to go do it too. That's awesome.
It is really true.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much. We
Thanks
really
for
appreciate your
having
time
me.
and your honesty.
Yeah.
We love you.
Totally.
yes.
You're a delight.
Love you guys too. I know. That's what everyone tells me. I'm kidding.
If I had a belt, I would ring it for you right now, and I would say, Happy birthday!
Thank you. Hopefully they never do that again.
This was the last time.
I'm going to follow you around with a bell.
Just announcing it.
Just in real life.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for joining us today. If you like what you've heard, take a second to subscribe or share it with a friend. There's plenty more information in our show notes, including a link to where you can listen to our music on Spotify. See you next week. Not crazy or crazy but not alone. That's it. Yeah. Crazy but not alone is pretty great.